there's such a focus on restriction and elimination of certain foods these days versus focusing on how to sort of like build and maintain a robust microbiome. So in practice, that's one of the first things that I look at versus, what foods have you taken out or what foods are you eating all the time? Obviously, that's important to some extent, but it's not the only key piece. And also, I think a lot of people think, just because something is gluten-free, dairy-free, or vegan, it's almost sort of like assumed that it's healthy. Whereas, a lot of these things, especially, obviously if it's processed, is full of, different chemicals that disrupt the gut lining. And it's definitely not necessarily nutrient dense in any way as well, too.
Okay, welcome to the For Her Kind podcast, where we break down the truth about health, fitness, and the foundations of lasting mental and physical transformation for women of all ages. I'm Dr. Alisa. I'm the founder of For Her Kind.
And I'm Christina, FHK Coach and partner. The podcast is made with steps in mind. So whether you're walking outside, cleaning your kitchen, or hopping on your walking pad, these next 30 minutes are for you.
And today we're diving into one of the most layered and misunderstood areas of women's health, gut health, metabolism, movement, and how it's all connected. We're talking about bloating, fatigue, constipation, hormones, stress, cravings. Yes, it's all related. And I'm so thrilled to be joined by Dr. Caroline Lewis. She's been with me since the beginning, since I started For Her Kind. And she's a naturopathic and functional medicine doctor, women's health specialist, IV specialist, and coach, obviously. But yeah, just a truly incredible 360-degree approach to health she has. And we're excited to talk about how gut health is about way more than probiotics. It's how we move, how we think, how we nourish, and how we feel.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to kind of like take us into a more personal side of your story? Like what drew you into this work, and just how you even got here?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, through coaching at For Her Kind, I love helping clients, feel more strong, healthy, beautiful, and confident. But it's definitely been a learning process through, years and years of education, but also my sort of personal experience with digestive health as well, too, that that shift can only really happen when we start from the inside and slowly work our way out. So I've had sort of a unique kind of background in terms of that. I've also studied neuroscience as well as naturopathic medicine. So sort of looking at things differently from more of like the gut brain perspective, as well as my own experience as well too. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's when I was 12 years old, which for anyone that doesn't know is an autoimmune condition that is inflammatory and affects any part of the digestive tract. So I was pretty young to be diagnosed, and at the time, sort of no one really knew what it was. And it had been diagnosed about a year after I had sort of like a major stressor and emotional trauma in my life, which at the time I didn't really piece together. But over time, and definitely, as I sort of delve more into neuroscience and naturopathic medicine and sort of holistic healing, I definitely realized that there was a strong link between my symptoms and, when I would have more of an emotional trigger or trauma occur. So that really opened my eyes into that connection, and sort of drew me to, ending up studying it and helping others heal it as well too.
Yeah, that inside out shift is everything. For sure. Was there like a light bulb moment for you where it all clicked, or was it just like seeing that connection between when you experienced that trauma and then your symptoms showing up after?
Yeah, I think I definitely always sort of like knew there was a link, but I think even at a young age, I remember like times I would even almost try and test it on myself where I would like think of something stressful or super emotional and I could literally bring on my symptoms almost instantly. It was pretty crazy at the time and especially so young. So I think over time realized that there was definitely a shift there. And then, certainly like as time went on, I just became even more aware of that and the importance of, being able to manage stress and regulate your emotions and the importance of that on gut health and whole body system health as well too.
Yeah, it's like The Body Keeps the Score, Dr. Gabor Mate.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that book, right? If not, go read it. But I really like how he's kind of like the pioneer, I guess, or like he's really started to bring light to the fact that, you know, trauma, it could be with a big T or a little t, can really create impact on the physiological level, and awareness around it is everything.
For sure. Yeah.
Imagine
It doesn't
like,
even be a huge trigger or trauma. It can be like even something, small, that can really bring on symptoms too.
It's all about how you perceive it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And a child, based on their life experience, they're going to perceive things in a different way.
Yep.
imagine like actually just being a 12-year-old and having this type of insight.
That is also pretty insane too. You're beyond your time. Very wise. Very wise.
Yeah, it was weird sort of being that age and putting it all together. But I'm, grateful, I think, that I was able to link it to something versus just not having any idea what was going on with my body. And I think it definitely sort of helped me learn how to lean into my intuition more a lot of the time, from a young age, which I think is definitely important.
Yeah, so femme. Turning your pain into purpose. You've like done exactly that, right?
Yeah.
I love
Yeah. And it's been cool to, sort of use my personal experience to also, I find it also helpful in terms of relating to patients as well too. I don't tend to sort of like go deep into things in terms of my personal story often, but sometimes I do find it does help when I bring up certain aspects of it, just, from that relatability perspective, and helping patients, have hope and more faith that there is an answer, and, they can feel better.
And that's what
Yeah.
makes like us all real, right? Like
Exactly.
I think that's what a lot of clients say to us as coaches. They're like, you guys are so relatable and you make us feel just like welcomed and comfortable here that they can even like open up about these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. I think it just creates a safer space for people to feel like they can really, like trust you. And I think that just like also optimizes their healing journey. Because I think that connection with, whether it be your coach or practitioner is so important.
Let's talk a little bit about the gut, because this is obviously such a hot topic in wellness right now. And
Yeah,
we,
always.
yeah, especially like on Instagram, we always see that. We always see like the quick videos, how to heal your gut, food to heal your gut. But we love how you bring a deeper, more like functional perspective. So can you break down what people often miss when it comes to gut healing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that, if they eat, fairly well balanced, then they won't have any issues. And I think, I definitely see a lot of patients come to me where, there's that aspect of frustration where they're like, I'm doing all the things. I feel like I'm like really eating clean and all this stuff, but I'm still suffering from all these symptoms and I don't get why, which I totally get that frustration. But I think there's so many different factors that are overlooked, and especially from more of that gut brain and stress connection. So our gut and brain actually, they're linked by what's called the vagus nerve, which is actually bi-directional communication. So the gut can reach out to the brain and send signals, but the brain can also send signals to the gut as well too. So there is a huge link there, and there's different ways that stress and emotions can affect gut health, and also even sort of like the balance in our microbiome can actually shift things cognitively in terms of more anxiety and depression, brain-wise as well too. So I think that's a huge piece that's overlooked. And there's also tons of neurotransmitters in the gut, especially serotonin, GABA, and dopamine. There's also an entire nervous system in the gut as well too. So it does really have an impact on brain health and vice versa. And I think, there's such a focus on restriction and elimination of certain foods these days versus focusing on how to sort of like build and maintain a robust microbiome. So in practice, that's one of the first things that I look at versus, what foods have you taken out or what foods are you eating all the time? Obviously, that's important to some extent, but it's not the only key piece. And also, I think a lot of people think, just because something is gluten-free, dairy-free, or vegan, it's almost sort of like assumed that it's healthy. Whereas, a lot of these things, especially, obviously if it's processed, is full of, different chemicals that disrupt the gut lining. And it's definitely not necessarily nutrient dense in any way as well, too.
Yeah, I love that. Like focusing on building up the resiliency of the gut and thinking about, what can we add to
Exactly.
do that rather than like what to take
What
away.
can we take out? Yeah,
Yeah. It just
for
goes
sure.
back to the abundance versus restrictive mindset. It works. It
Yeah.
works. And then also too, I love to look at things from the GHK lens, of course, because what we see so often is that chronic gut symptoms like bloating, constipation, diarrhea, or even like more specifically what, conventional medicine calls Crohn's, is due to like specific emotions that we've experienced or specific life events we've perceived. So constipation, for example, is reflecting, you can't like hold on or trying to hold on to a safe situation that or something that you can't let go of, or not being able to let thoughts go, like ruminating.
Yeah.
Ruminating the same thoughts over and over again. Like even think like that, like laying in bed awake, not being able to let that thought go. That would be very similar to like constipation type constitution. And then diarrhea, I mean, diarrhea can come after the constipation. So it can be from that holding on or not able to let go conflict as well. But it's often related to having to let go of something fast. So, or like consuming something that you're a little bit repulsed by and you're like, I got to get this out. Like think of food poisoning, for example. That can be an example of that as well. And then the small intestine specifically. So this is related to Crohn's disease. If you're not comfortable with discussing this, we can crop this out. But related to Crohn's is indigestible anger. So are you able to connect that with your life experience? Like, was there like a situation that was hard to digest that was like an anger that you couldn't like let go of?
Yeah, I think probably, I mean, just like getting super personal, the main like emotional trauma that I did have before I was diagnosed was my Nana passing away at a young age. And she was a very special person in my life. So I think I held a lot of anger and resentment around that and not being able to sort of like control that situation and me just being, angry about the loss in general. So that would make sense from that side of things for sure.
Yeah, and it's so personal, right? Like you perceive as a young child, like you were like almost like angry, like why is my Nana taken away from me?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah,
was yeah,
exactly.
yeah, to create impact at the brain organ level. So it's really interesting because when we're able to make these connections with the conflicts, we can have the awareness itself can sometimes downgrade it. And then we can
Yeah.
um, perspective shifts to complete the healing because symptoms are also like symptoms aren't always a bad thing, right? We always see some
Yeah.
symptoms.
100%. There's just a signal that it's, and there's an imbalance that needs to be
There's
addressed.
always wisdom. There's wisdom from the symptoms.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing to even think about, like, kind of off topic, but even with grieving, right? As children, like that's so shocking to children. All of a sudden, they've just lost someone. They don't understand that people just go away, right? And especially when it's somebody so important to you. So, I mean, I think for listeners too, it's like we need to think about like, how do we deal with losing somebody? And if we do have young ones in our lives, like how are we going to help them cope with it? Are we telling them to just, deal with it, go upstairs in your room, somebody's gone, and that's it? Or are we communicating about it? Are we, doing things to remember them and celebrate them? That will help you kind of get through these processes.
Yeah, like creating
Yeah.
a safe place to express emotion also, like
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
that situation. Cause like, I don't know about you, but I grew up like being like, hey, no emotions really were,
Yeah, Europeans.
yeah, yeah. And everything is perfect. And yeah, that can cause its own set of issues too, right? So that's the thing. And I like to use my dog as an example this week. So I just got a new puppy. And we brought her home and her bowels start changing, right? Like this is so typical. You bring a puppy home, their stools are changing.
Yeah.
And previously, like in my family home growing up with our puppy, then it was like, oh my gosh, we got to go to the vet. We got to fix something. We got to fix it. It's like she's literally just adjusting. And of course, your body is going to adapt in some way to try and keep you to keep you safe, secrete some extra digestive juices to help with that, to help you like manage this change. And just also, I think not having a ton of fear when we do have the slightest change in our gut health or something like that too, it also helps because like Caroline was saying, our vagus nerve is controlling our digestion too. So if our vagus nerve is like helps us rest and digest. But if we're stimulating the other end, which is parasympathetic fight or flight, by being scared and afraid of our symptoms, then we're not benefiting ourselves at all. We're doing more harm than good. So just a note to like try and stay as calm around symptoms as possible and say, okay, what is there for me to learn here? Who can I chat with from a place of, like just a bit more peace and calm than, really frantic trying to fix the thing. There's so much in practice. I know I used to see it in when I did one-to-one ND consults as well, like just trying to fix the thing. What can I take to fix this? And it's like, okay, hold on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think even like on that note, it's wild how many women we've coached who think they need a diet or a detox when
Or the array bloating pills.
I know.
Yeah.
Those
Which
array
don't even
bloating
make
pills.
sense. But
Yeah, and really what they need is safety, awareness, and like small shifts that reconnect them to their own body.
yeah, Caroline, going into your background, like with neuroplasticity, how do you see affirmations being helpful? Like, I really like I am safe. I think that one is so helpful. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It can be huge. I mean, especially if essentially if you're whatever thoughts that you're thinking most often, those are creating and almost like ingraining those neural pathways even more. And if it's a negative thought, that's going to be having a negative impact on your gut health as well as, other body systems as well too. So with, positive self-talk and even affirmations, if you're repeating them consistently, even if you don't believe them at first, but it's still the consistent practice of either writing them down or saying them out loud, you're still going to be creating those new neural pathways in the brain so that automatically over time, your brain will shift to almost like reflexively thinking those thoughts and activating that pathway versus activating that negative sort of, more ruminative pathway that had been typically activated in the past.
Yes. I remember when I first started learning this stuff and I read, there's so many quotes I can fall back on, but so what you think about and think about, you bring about.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and I remember writing it out and being like, oh my goodness, okay. So I got to make sure I'm thinking about good stuff. But
Yeah.
really, like,
Exactly.
but just to add on to what you're saying, the law of assumption, the more you assume, the more those things harden into facts. And even if at first, when I talk about this with clients all the time, when they're trying to achieve this visionary goal that they feel like might be so far away from them, I'm like, get delusional, right? Like break free from the illusion.
Yeah.
Delulu is the Salulu.
Lulu.
Yeah, there's someone, I didn't make that up. Somebody else made that up and I stole it. Delulu is a Salulu. And it can go with anything, go with your symptoms and go with your gut health and go with how you're handling a situation. So yeah, I like to dive into that stuff. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Alisa, have you ever heard of like the artist Beautiful Chorus? And it's literally
Oh,
like
I have. Yeah. I love
it's
that.
yeah, I mean, I first heard it in a yoga class, and they're all it's like a whole album of affirmations. So
Yeah.
like, because I love I am safe too. Like I even say it to my son when I put him to bed. I'm like, you're safe, and I live by it. But this album, we can also link it in this podcast, but it's so great. And I literally just like listen to it in the car and I just repeat the affirmations that they're singing over and over again.
Yes, Kate, I
Mhm.
love that. That's like Brian
Mhm.
and I a couple weeks ago, we downloaded that app called Voices AI, and we literally made songs out of affirmations. Chat helped us, but now it's awesome because I mean, for some reason, Ryan's songs are all way better than mine. So I have his stuck in my head too. But you're getting them stuck in your head. So it's a great, almost like if you will, hack to
Yeah.
affirm.
That's a really good idea. I never thought of it that way. Of it
Yeah,
get
or
like, it gets stuck
rhymes.
in your
Rhymes
head.
are
Yeah.
good too. Even if it just rhymes, anything that you can get stuck into your head, so it's easy to fall back on when you feel like your mind is not going in the right direction, or if you're just not thinking loving thoughts, something to fall back on super quick. Um, like a song or a rhyme is really good. Have you noticed, Caroline, when women start healing physically only after something emotionally or mentally was processed or let go of?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely, obviously, targeting things from a holistic and supplemental and herbal IV, whatever perspective is super important and part of the sort of missing puzzle piece. But I see often in practice, sometimes there's not full symptom resolution, and I would say often, until the stressor or emotional piece is completely resolved or dealt with in some way. And I think it's easy for us to think we might have properly sort of like dealt something or processed emotions, but often so I feel like those are still lingering and they can still be triggering symptoms. It's hard working through stuff, and sort of shifting perspectives there. But I think again, too, that's why, you know, a thorough intake is so important in my practice as well, too. So not only in terms of like the initial intake and asking, what was happening in your life around the time that you noticed symptoms? Was there any sort of trauma or change in lifestyle or something major that happened, or even something small that you sort of associate with? But it's also something I check in with at every single follow-up after that, in terms of, we'll rate their sort of like emotional reactivity since we last checked in, or their stress, and what have triggers changed in any way. So I think that's super important to continually assess and be aware of, because it is a huge factor, I think, in terms of like full, complete healing.
And I think like we love to ask this, but like, what are your top three non-negotiables for gut and hormone health?
That's a good question. That's a hard question. Um, I think,
Depends, right?
yeah, I'm not
Always
even
the
gonna
answer.
have like a crazy answer to it, because I think you can do so much that's so simple, but a lot of people just don't want to do it because maybe they don't think it's going to have any impact, but it really doesn't take that much. So I would say for sure having a protein dense meal to start the day. I usually recommend, if you can get it in within 30 to 60 minutes after waking, and ideally before caffeine. Fiber, I mean, I could talk about fiber all day. Everyone knows I'm obsessed with it. So definitely hitting at least 25 to 30 grams per day, which I always say to patients, it doesn't sound like a lot, but again, if you were to track it, which we have our clients do, obviously, most people aren't getting nearly enough. And
Yeah, if
that,
you're not being intentional, it is easy to
no,
not hit it.
100%.
And by
Um,
what foods?
Yes,
Specifically.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
not fake supplements or processed stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then also just in terms of, having, I think, some sort of morning routine where you're starting the day with a more regulated nervous system versus, I mean, I think in our society as well too, it's almost like rewarded to be busy and stressed. Which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because it's not helping you or your health in
Mhm.
the long run. So, whether that be even taking like 10 minutes to yourself, ideally a bit longer, but it's time where you're not looking at your email, not checking your texts, you're not being stimulated in any way, and you have some time to yourself before you're sort of rushing around and starting your day, because otherwise you're going to be starting your day in that more sympathetic fight or flight state, which automatically halts your digestive processes. So especially if you're starting your day like that every single day of the week, over time, you're for sure going to develop digestive issues, just because your body isn't going to have time to properly break down or assimilate nutrients from food. So you don't have to, get crazy with your routines or anything, but just sort of, doing these simple things can make a huge difference.
And I feel
Yeah.
like they're all things that like everyone's probably like rolling their eyes at right now
Probably,
because
yeah,
we hear these things, right? Like we are told this, and yet literally majority of people are not doing it. And like, we see it with our clients too. Like this is the lifestyle that we're trying to coach women and really understand that this is what's normal,
Mhm.
right?
exactly.
I always like to say, you're not going to have nice poops if you're running from a bear, right? Like you need to be calm. So
I like
you're
that.
not, and you're not even gonna, and the thing is too, like, yeah, you can eat as healthy as you want, but you're not going to extract the goodness from that food if you're not calm. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, granted, I don't have children yet, but I am so strict with my morning routine. Like, at least my
Yeah,
time.
yours is really solid.
Yeah.
It's not long. It's like I'm at least getting pen to paper or listening to something loving.
Yeah,
Reminders, saturating my brain with goodness. Even if it's just like listening to it while I wash my face and brush my teeth.
for sure.
Way to the gym, I'll listen to it.
Mhm.
But before I open up emails or phone or anything like that, I'm
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
always say
gosh. I
patients.
know like not to talk to you, Alisa, in the morning. I'm like, I'm gonna leave Alisa for an hour.
Well, and because I'm 2 hours behind. We have
Was
to.
I mean like when we're even like physically together,
Oh yeah.
like I like you wake up at first of all like the crack of dawn sometimes and I'm like, we went to bed so late. Why are you up already?
Yeah.
And you're like by yourself and I'm like, and I just let you have that time. Whereas like some people are like, hi, I want to chit chat and whatever.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's
know thyself. Know thyself. I know. I need like silence to like recalibrate my brain, to be honest. It's just the way I am. I'm super fun after an hour by myself.
or if it's really close to bedtime, don't go near
Yeah.
Alisa.
Yeah. I'm not, I'm like pretty much useless after 6 p.m. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
before we start to even like wrap things up, we obviously need to talk about FHK supplements because this is Caroline's baby.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure, I mean, you can probably speak to this more better than I can, but I remember when you guys were like, okay, we're gonna do supplements. And I even like remember an Insta post. I think you guys said you were like literally sitting at the one hotel, like brainstorming.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just so awesome. It's exciting. Like, and you know, it's not an easy task to bring light, right?
Yeah.
You know, people don't realize how difficult it is from even just like shipping to creating the labels to creating a good product that's healthy because there's so many supplements out there that are filled with junk, right? So yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, especially seeing in practice and having such a focus on gut health and digestion, one of the most common things that I see, and it's one of the, most important questions that I do ask diet wise, if a patient says they're taking a protein powder, I always ask what protein powder it is specifically. Because anytime a patient is on a whey-based powder or a powder that's 100% pea protein, that's one of the first things that I take them off of, especially if they're having any digestive symptoms. It's another thing if you don't have any digestive issues, but those are huge sort of triggers and disruptors to the gut lining. And they do tend to sort of sit and almost like clump together in the gut, which causes fermentation over time, which will lead to bloating, gas, and a lot of digestive upset. So one thing that was super important to us with the FHK protein was that it wasn't whey or pea protein based. So it's actually beef based. And it's a super clean formulation. It's super easily digestible. I recommend it to every patient that does have digestive issues, and it's super well tolerated. It's also optimized for nutrient assimilation and absorption as well too. It has a complete profile of amino acids, and it also tastes amazing too. So that was super important to us, and something I think we're super proud of with it.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I remember there was a time, I don't know, maybe like 5+ years ago, that everyone was all about vegan products. It was like vegan
Yeah.
protein powder. Everyone, like, that's what women should be consuming. Myself included, I started doing it. And I think like I was,
It's like
oh, it's so
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah, it is gross.
there's some that are okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not my preference. Not my preference.
And I'm not even going to be like biased here. The FHK protein powder is so freaking good. I was using the ATP beef based. And occasionally I still have it in my cupboard, but the FHK one tastes better. 100% better.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm obsessed too. I add it like literally to everything I can.
Yeah, it tastes really good. It's like the chocolate one is like pudding to me.
Yeah, it does taste like pudding. It's so good. I love the vanilla. I mean, I feel like we have so many fans of each flavor too. Like even people who don't like chocolate, like I'm not a big chocolate person, but I love our chocolate one too.
Hey, yeah, I'm not a big vanilla girl, but I love the vanilla FHK
Yeah.
protein.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
then we
100%.
also have magnesium. Do you want to talk about
Yes.
magnesium?
Yeah, 100%. So magnesium is super important for our gut health, not only in terms of helping to regulate bowel motility, but also again, in terms of more so targeting that gut brain connection because it acts, well, especially the form that we use. So it's an elemental form of magnesium bisglycinate. So the bisglycinate form is the one that targets sort of nervous system relaxation the most out of any magnesium form. And because it's an elemental form, it's also much better absorbed in the body than sort of, your average bisglycinate formulas. So it's super great in terms of, usually I recommend sort of taking it 20 minutes or so before bedtime. It's also amazing for our clients in terms of muscle recovery as well too from training.
Mhm. Any perks for like around your menstruation time?
Oh yeah, for sure. So it'll also help in terms of menstrual cramping as well. Any
Mhm.
headache, anything like that also. And even in terms of more cases of like PMDD, where a
Mhm.
lot of patients have more of sort of like the depressive and anxiety type symptoms around their period. It can definitely help in terms of sort of alleviating some of those too.
Should we get into some of the questions that we got from our audience?
Yeah, let's do it.
Rapid fire. Okay, thoughts on the food allergy test? Food
I
sensitivity.
get this question often. I would say it's probably like one of the most common questions I have patients ask when they come in terms of like, oh, should we run this test? And I will say if a patient is, dead set on running it, then I'll be like, okay, if you really want to run it, we can. But I always explain to them it's sort of like a snapshot in time of what your gut is reacting to. So first of all, if you're going to do the food sensitivity test, in terms of best accuracy, ideally you want to be eating a very varied diet for about 6 weeks leading up to actually doing the testing, which often isn't realistic for a lot of patients if they've already eliminated, for example, gluten and dairy, and they're noticing obvious symptoms from eating those foods. It's not going to be a very nice process reintroducing those. Um, but also, if there is any sort of inflammation or leaky gut, which essentially refers to almost like gaps in the gut lining that can occur over time through things like chronic stress, poor diet, alcohol, lack of sleep, etc., which essentially allows food antigens, which are like food immune molecules, and even toxins to sort of pass through the gut lining and trigger an immune response. So if there is any of that present, which in most cases of any patients with digestive symptoms, it is, then you're automatically going to be having an overreactive gut immune response to most foods already, especially more of the most common allergens, which tend to be, the gluten, dairy, eggs, legumes. So I don't find it to be the most accurate kind of test. And I also don't think it really gives us any solution because, for sure, if you're eliminating those foods that are triggering that immune response, you're probably going to feel better, but it's not really a long-term solution in terms of, living like that forever, right? And
Mhm.
we're not actually working on healing the issue that's causing it in the first place. So in terms of doing any testing, I much prefer doing stool testing that looks at sort of, inflammation, the microbiome, digestive enzyme production, because that actually shows us what's causing more of the reactivity to certain foods versus, eliminating a bunch that a test shows.
Mhm.
I
And
remember you guys actually I did that test with you, Caroline,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
both of you were like, yeah, you can do it, but like you're not gonna get that much. But I was like so desperate, like because
Yeah,
I
which I
was just
totally get. And I think for some patients, it's almost like it almost like confirms in their mind for them like what they think is going on, which, I totally get
that can bring
wanting
them
that
peace.
answer. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that in
but it
those cases,
didn't.
I will run it, but
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
can I tell you,
also like
like
you should do the stool testing too.
I know, and like I really should have done that, but I mean, I was doing it for acne reasons,
Yeah.
and literally, I remember getting the results, and if anything, I actually then was like, "What the actual f?" I have a sensitivity to life. I was like, it was literally everything,
Yeah.
potato, dairy. It was like everything. So I was like, "So what can I
Yeah.
eat
So what
at
are you
this
supposed to
point?"
eat? Yeah. So it's not realistic a lot of times in terms of, and you're supposed to ideally eliminate any foods that are listed as moderate sensitivity or high sensitivity as well too. So that takes out a lot of them for most people. So it's not really a realistic way to live.
No, and then also to like to expand on that, at least with the stool testing, it kind of tells you what things to add to help,
Exactly.
restore balance in the
Yeah,
gut. But if we know, like if obviously I'm going to bring in the GHK lens, like if we know from the GHK lens that the root cause is a conflict shock, so something that you perceived emotionally that was emotionally distressing and shocking, that's going to be the root cause of what symptoms you're experiencing. Your symptoms, again, they're just messages from your body. But in order to resolve them, having some of these tools that bring you closer to peace is really, really helpful.
for sure. Yeah. And I think again, that's, where more of a holistic plan is so important, that targets for sure the mental, emotional side of things, as well as, any, for example, like gut lining healing that needs to happen too.
Yeah, and it's so cool too because like when we look at the GHK lens and like the specific parts of the digestive system, it actually gets like super specific. So like the duodenum in the stomach. Obviously, we're not always testing these things, but we can use the intake to figure out which like what they're perceiving in their life, what's going on that's creating these types of conflicts. So we'll know, okay, is it a fear disgust conflict, which would be affecting the duodenum? So we would already know automatically, okay, that's that part. Territorial anger and identity conflict would be colon. And then indigestible anger. So like not being able to digest life, which, so many of us experience. Like whenever you get like information, you're like, hey, that was like really hard to digest. That's going to be an example of your small intestine and your colon being affected too. So again, just going back to like the intake and just getting that 360 approach to things and bringing people closer to peace and awareness is like the number one thing I think with getting better from this stuff. And like just like not seeing microbes as the enemies also. I feel like people are like, hey, well, what is causing this? What is causing this? It's like, can we look within and see like what wisdom's here for me? And like also not down to I feel like we didn't touch on breath work, but I know that you love it, Caroline.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And that's also such a good practice that I do recommend to most patients in terms of that, sort of nervous system response and helping to regulate it and act directly on the vagus nerve. Even also sounds weird, but like breath work that also incorporates like humming will activate the vagus nerve too. So that could be super good. But I actually got into Kundalini breath work during the pandemic, actually, when I was having really
So
bad
good.
stress and anxiety, and it completely shifted things for me. So it can be, such a helpful tool in terms of re-regulating your stress response and just learning to sort of cope with things better, which ultimately can improve your digestion and, other symptoms a lot. So
I love Kundalini. I used to go to such great classes in Toronto.
it's so
I
good.
know.
And like arm workout, they incorporate so much
Yeah.
arm
Oh my gosh, it's
movement.
exhausting.
It
One
is.
time I had to do like 50 squats or something
Yeah.
in a row. I was like, this is a lot.
Crazy. Crazy. I had Kenzie Burke's a little bit, her membership last year for a bit
Okay.
to have here because I mean, I found one yoga studio, but they don't do the fun breath.
Hard to
I
find. And once you
yeah,
like someone, like you just really only connect to
yeah,
it with that person.
yeah. I love Evolve by Erica. I actually know her really well, but I started doing one-to-one sessions with her during the pandemic, and now she has a whole like app and platform, which I highly recommend. But she's awesome if anyone's looking for a resource for that.
Love it. I will definitely. Oh yeah, we can just like put all these things in the show notes of
Yeah, we
everything.
can link everything. Yeah.
Mhm.
Fun,
Mhm.
fun. Okay, last question before we wrap it up. What's one thing you wish every woman knew? Every woman, sorry. What's one thing you wish every woman knew about her gut, her body, and her hormones?
That's a good question. I think just coming back to the fact that everything is interrelated, especially when I do sort of initially talk to patients on, free discovery calls or whatever, and I'm explaining sort of what my focuses are and what I tend to typically treat. Pretty much 100% of the time, women are like, oh, well, that's perfect because I have all those issues. And I always say the reason why I treat all of them and focus on these things is because they're all interrelated. So every patient tends to have issues in these areas. So I think, just remembering that, you can't just sort of water the soil in one area of your life and expect a full garden to grow. Like you really have to target different areas and, you know, give love to each area and each body system as well. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
And I just want to add too, because we touched on like a couple different perspectives, like, you know, GHK lens and naturopathic
Mhm.
and things like that. And I just want to say there's multiple ways to approach things depending on like where you're at in your journey.
For
And
sure.
again, if something's going to bring you closer to peace, like if testing is going to bring you closer to peace, you know, whatever it may be, then that is the direction that you should go. And finding a practitioner or finding someone or finding a community that helps you achieve that when you're in your journey, if you're struggling with anything related to your gut, follow that, because there's so much fear-mongering information out there and like TikTok saying, do this, do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just find someone to support you through it.
Yeah, 100%. The number of times I, you know, am talking to patients and I'll get questions about, oh, I saw this on TikTok. TikTok is great as, you know, an educational platform in some respect, but take everything that you see on there with a grain of salt and also be aware of, you know, who you're listening to and taking advice from as well. You know, a lot of these trends aren't necessarily, you know, backed by any actual results. So just be mindful.
And remember, like, it is now a new source of marketing. Okay. So it's no longer we're just
Yeah,
looking at ads and, you know, commercials on TVs like back in the day, right? Like there's an algorithm behind these things. There's a strategy to make you watch it, to get more views. So,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know, take that into consideration.
for sure.
But I guess we're wrapping it up, ladies. So if today's episode lit a fire in you and you're ready to work with your body, not against it, head to the show notes and apply for coaching. Caroline, it was such a pleasure. You are the best. And honestly, if you haven't been able to experience and hang out with Caroline, as she literally has the jolliest laugh on earth. So there it is.
There it is. Okay.
She's
Yeah.
the absolute best. Yes.
Mhm.
Love you
Yes.
guys.
Thank you for listening if you made it this long. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend if you think it'll add value to them. We hope you got some steps. And yeah, subscribe, leave a review, and stay tuned because we have lots of powerful guests and conversations to come.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.